At this time, we'll call our meeting to order. Let us stand for invocation and for our prayer. To the great Creator, we thank you for this beautiful day. We thank you for the honor of being able to serve here on this earth again. We ask that you guide us with your wisdom, with your knowledge, but also with your vision, that the path that we walk will be the path that you will guide us upon, that we will do the service that we're called to do to better the lives of all of those who have placed their trust in us to lead this great city. So we welcome you into this meeting this day to have your way, that the way will be brighter for all. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, we look for the approval of our minutes from July the 10th, 2023, from our regular meeting. Do we have a motion?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second in the discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. And opposed, like sign. Let it reflect the minutes have passed. At this time, we will open our public hearing. It's a public hearing that will be held to receive information on proposed water and sewer rates increase. This time, we have Mr. Kevin Rollins. Good morning.
The public hearing is related to the increase in water and sewer rates for the years fiscal year 24, beginning October 1st of this year, fiscal year 25, 26, 27, and 28. The purpose of these increases are to support the bond issues. One of the issues being for second reading today. Another issue is expected in fiscal year 25, and the third and final one is expected in fiscal year 2027. These are made necessary because of economic improvements that are here now and future possible economic future to allow growth in the water and sewer system to support these entities and industries that are coming into the Florence area.
Thank you, Mr. Rollinson. At this time, we do have one individual signed up to speak. We have Ms. Deborah Runyon. Ms. Deborah Runyon, are you present? Would you please come forward? And Ms. Runyon, we will ask that in your presentation, if you were refrain to a 5-minute presentation. Thank you.
Well, hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Deborah Runyon, and I am retired.
Ms. Runyon, would you please pull that mic a little closer to your soft voice? Thank you.
Is this right? Okay. Deborah Runyon. I'm a retired educator. And so I read the paper from last month's city council meeting. And in that paper, it said that just what you were talking about, sir, was the rate hike for the water. Just to be clear, 2024, the rate goes up 5%. 2025, the rate goes up 10%. The following 3 years, 26, 27, and 28, the rate goes up 9.5%. So I was doing that calculation, going, okay, my water bill now is $99.07. Well, let's round that up to $100, right? Okay, so the first year, my bill would go up to $105, then $115, then $126, then $138. Now, this is my base fee here. After 5 years, it would go up to $151, from $100 to $151. That's a lot on a fixed income. That's a whole lot, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know how many of you guys are retired and on a fixed income, but when I have a fixed income, I have to live within a budget. And so my budget, if expenses are more in this category, I have to decrease expenses in this category. So it can buy my clothes used at the Mission Mart. I can cook more at home. I can travel less. So, but I do have to look at my budget because you know what? I cannot go to my son and say, gee whiz, I'm short. Can you lend me this much money? Or better yet, can you give me this much money? So I was looking at that a little bit. When expenses go up, I have to make strong decisions about what to do. Let's look at what the rates have gone up just in the last 6 months. April, Duke Energy went up 8.2%. Anybody have an increase in power? May, Florence County millage went up, and so did solid waste fee increase. June, Florence City property tax went up 8% already. June 28th, the school board initiated an increase. So our taxes are increasing. I'm not seeing that necessarily with my income. So, I know we have this wonderful new power plant coming. Not power plant, I'm sorry, battery company coming in. And I was looking at that just because I was interested in it. And there's a lot of money being spent to that. Specifically, $20 million for the water, wastewater, and infrastructure. Road, specifically, infrastructure on that. Well, that's a lot of money. I'm just saying. Back to me. And you, your taxes are going up. Your water rates are going up. I think everybody on the board works, though, so you have the potential to overcome that. Those of us that are retired, the workforce is not always looking for us. Just saying. You know? So we've got to change our way of living. Our standard of living changes when our income is spent in different ways. Do we need water infrastructure? Absolutely. Do we have a problem? But why haven't we been doing that along the way? If my roof leaks, I don't wait until the ceiling falls down before I repair, because then I've got that much more. Also, it's real expensive to do things these days because supply chain, materials, labor, everything's gotten more expensive. But if we'd been doing this a little along, maybe we wouldn't be in such a crunch. Also, with these expenses of tax increase on our water bill, there's a $35 million bond, which the gentleman over there, and I'm sorry, I don't know your name, indicated. So there's $35 million bond there for 3 different bonds, which comes to $446 million. I guess our tax rates pay that back? I don't know. There might be an accountant or somebody in here that can tell that to me. Bottom line, you represent us, City Council. You are our governing body. I think you need to make some different decisions. Because I don't think you're entitled to my money every time you have an expense. I think that it would be nice if you would look at your budget and prioritize where you need to spend it. Water infrastructure has been neglected. No doubt about that. But where did the money go when it wasn't taken care of? Because we know that it's a problem. It's been a problem. I don't know about you guys. But, you know, I've lived in town. I know about that, where there's water in the streets. So, please reclaim funding somewhere so that it does not have to impact our lives. We're willing to, of course, help. But this is a lot. 50%, $100 to $150 every single month. Just saying.
Ms. Frenia, thank you for those words. And at this time, I would like to acknowledge the City Council members. I think Councilman McCall wanted to speak. Please.
Yep. Thank you, Ms. Rankin, and also members of the City of Florence. As soon as this issue came up, you know, main concern was definitely individuals on fixed income and how would they be able to muster this impact. It's my understanding that this was already studied to have a major improvement to our water system in 2028 because of the new growth that we did have. It's requiring us to bump it up a little earlier. And we want to be on top of the utility system and making sure that we're not getting behind. So we're not like Flint or Jackson, Mississippi, or other failed utilities out there. Florence has been on the forefront of great development, as well as been on the forefront of making sure that we're on top of our standards for our utility system. But again, when we knew it was time for the infrastructure increase, my biggest concern was for low income people. And we have been looking at things particularly for low income and people on fixed incomes. We're looking at something now, it's a roundup system to help people on fixed incomes. It hasn't been passed yet, but it's my understanding that we should have it up by next month to try to have some type of help to those on fixed incomes, because again, I want to make sure that the city works for everybody, and I understand the tight position that you're in, but I do think we're here now. All right, I know you're saying it's been going on for what has been going on for years and years and years. I think you have a council now who is focused on infrastructure, and again, I think it's time for us to move forward on it, but at the same time, provide the comfort as well as stability for you all on fixed income as well.
Can I ask a question back to you?
Yes.
Sir?
Sure.
So if this raise is through 2028, does that mean that raise that percentage, which would be 5, 10, 9.5, 9.5, and 9.5, would that be eliminated and we would go back to the original pricing of our water once that bill has been paid? I was afraid of that because that's happened. Once you get a tax in place, it kind of stays there.
And I think Kevin can answer this. I think it did say that the bonding is based off of an estimate. If it's proven to be less, of course we will make those changes. But I think
Yes,
Kevin can probably answer those
as we
questions.
said before, we've got another bond issue in 25 and another one in 27. If by the time we get, say, to 27 and we see that we don't need to borrow as much, certainly we can cut back the amount we need to borrow, and then we'll recalculate to see where the rates need to be, and if they need to be lower, then we will lower the rates to the level so that we can continue funding the bonds and maintaining the system.
Is it possible to redirect funds from other areas where you can finance this particular project since it is taking priority?
No, ma'am. The water is not supported by any tax whatsoever. It is supported wholly by the revenues generated by the system. And so the system generates the revenues. It pays for, of course, the salary of those who maintain and operate the system. And again, the rates pay for the debt service that we have made. We just built a wastewater treatment plant about 10 years ago. About 20 years ago, the water plant was built. And so those bonds are, we're still paying on those bonds as well. The expansion will just be in addition to those facilities. And so, we don't set the rates just because. We set them based on here's what we believe our expenditures will be, here's what we believe the revenues are. Now, what do we have to do? We look at the future of those. When we set our 10-year bond rating, our 10-year water and sewer rates every year, we have an independent outside agency do the study. Typically, it's been 2%, 3%, 2% on water, 3% on sewer, which just keeps up with the cost of inflation over that time period.
Well, it seems like the motivating factor for the bonds and the infrastructure, which is good for Florence, has been the battery.
Yes,
the EV battery that's under, and they use a lot of water. When I was looking at that, they use thousands and thousands of gallons of water per day.
Per day, 1.1 million gallons per day.
1.1 million gallons per day. That's a lot of water.
And that's to start with. They have three additional phases
And
that
then
they
they'll
can
do
expand
more.
out to.
Yeah. So, Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Runyon.
Please consider.
And also for the general public, just so you know that as a council throughout history, the rates are continuously looked at every 10 years, and they're adjusted to be according so. When it comes to the care of the system, when you saw the new plant built, that was built for the future in mind. When you look at the rates for the city of Florence, you have some of the lowest water rates there is. But also know that I believe everyone says they want to see Florence grow. But as the city grows, you're going to have to supply water to those who come here, not only just to the city, but also to the county. Where we're at right now, we every 10 years evaluate. Because of the growth, when we're reevaluating now, we are simply moving things forward so we can stay ahead, because we do not want to be in a position that when the city is growing, expanding with services all through the county, that when you get to a place when DHEC tells you you can't extend any more water. So what we're doing now is to prevent us from being in a place where we cannot provide the water services that's needed not only now, but also in the future. And so I would encourage everyone, look at the water rates throughout. One of the things that we do as a city is try to make sure that we maintain the most cost-effective system of providing services. So we do not enter into these water rates, haphazardly. We have the numbers, we have the studies, and as a council, we do look to see all options that we can do to maintain it for everyone. I think all of us will be soon pushing toward that retirement number. And when you look at the rate increase for others, it's because of where we're at now economically. But I want to assure you that as a city, we will do our best to always maintain that infrastructure. We apply for grants and everything that we can find to assist in that process, because we want to leave everything better than where we found it, because we want the best for the generations even to come after us. So no, there's nothing that you see us ever do that we don't really look at the studies and see, is there any other options? And this is the only option at this time. The chair will now recognize the pro tem.
Thank you. Ms. Hemingway, Michael, would you come up forward? Just want to address this to you, if I could, please. Thank you. So the multiple bond issues that are going to be done will generate in total about $400 million. Is that right?
Correct. Yes, sir.
And so we've been talking about water, and thank you so much, Ms. Runyon, for coming forward and speaking to the water issue. But the work that's going to be done is more than simply on the water side, as I understand it. It's also on the sewer as well as on the stormwater. Is that right?
The stormwater is completely separate. That's a separate utility. But this will be for the surface water treatment facility to expand that. Also, the future phases, phase 2, will be looking at distribution and collection system work. And then phase 3 is expanding the wastewater treatment facility from 22 million gallons to 33 million gallons.
And so, as I understand it, this is conversation that we've been having internally to the city for a while about the expansion of the water treatment facility as well as the wastewater treatment. And what is happening is this just simply moves the timetable up and increases our capacity to be able to handle whatever growth may come, as well as address the system and make the improvements internal to the system that are needed to, as Councilman McCall was saying, make sure that we don't have any problems with our water system as we've seen in some of these other communities. Is that right?
Yes, sir. The surface water expansion and the wastewater, those discussion and review began in 2018 when we got ready to do the 2020 to 2030 rate study. At that point in time, based on what we saw over the next 10 years, the rates were set to accomplish the standard cost of living inflationary CRP over that time period. Based on the 2018 study, when we started in 2015, we were not going to expand the surface water facility until 2030. So that was going to be in the next rate cycle that we would start looking at in 2028 to expand the surface water facility. The wastewater facility at that time, based on considered growth, we were not looking at growth for expanding the wastewater facility until 2040. But due to the growth, not only from the industrial side, but also residential growth, those things have now accelerated us to ensure that we have excess capacity before future growth is incurred. Based on DHEC requirements, once your capacity reaches 90% of capacity, then you have to start construction of a new facility, or you went into what they would do is put a moratorium where you don't have any new growth until that excess capacity beyond that 90% has been constructed and operational.
And the thing that I'm very concerned about is the quality of our water and making sure that every citizen in this that receives our water has the highest level quality water, and are we addressing the quality at the same time we're addressing capacity?
Yes, sir. We just received a South Carolina State Revolving Fund grant of $500,000. So our engineering firm, C.D. & Smith, is going to be doing a next round of emerging contaminants, is what it's called by EPA and DHEC, to look at how we need to adjust the surface water facility. Primarily what you hear in the news more than anything else now is either PFAS or forever chemicals. And so that study is going to specifically look at how we need to adjust the surface water treatment facility. And we've already started analysis on parameters as the production facility is in place now to see if the existing infrastructure is going to be able to meet the new requirements, and if so, what type of rotation basis that's going to occur. And then if not, what other unit processes where we have to add to this expansion process to be able to meet those new guidelines.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I just wanted everybody to understand that it's not just the quantitative aspect that's being approached, but it's the qualitative, which I think all of us are very, very concerned about. Thank you, ma'am, for your questions, and thank you, Michael.
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Councilman Braddock.
Thank you also, Ms. Runyon, for your comments. I've recently, in the past few months, been in a position where I've been able to speak to several mayors and city councils of other municipalities in the PD region, most notably Nichols, Marion, Mullins, Jefferson, Pageland, Chesterfield County, Pamplico. These areas where most of them don't have any control over their water whatsoever, and they're literally drying up because other organizations own the water, like Alligator Water Supply, Grand Strand Water. They're not owned by the municipality, and so these communities are literally drying up. So first of all, I want to acknowledge our previous leadership, Mayor Rocky Pierce, Mayor Frank Willis, Wakila, for when times were tough, realizing the importance of water. And when we talk about economic development, I remember Greg Robinson saying that whoever's best with number 2 is number 1 in economic development. Now I'll let y'all figure that out. But if you have your own water and you can mitigate sewer, it puts you in a wonderful place. It used to be all about location, location, location. Now it's about water, water, water in terms of growing. And so we do have to mitigate the financial constraints on the retiring citizens in our area, at the same time balancing having opportunities for our children and the quality of water for them. And unfortunately, for this mostly new council, we have the burden of expanding the system at a time when the supplies and the cost have gone almost doubled. You know, when you're looking at 50% increase in the water, I remember putting out, probably not very wisely, a Facebook post about it costing $200 million to correct our water problems. And I got a lot of flack about that. Well, that was about a year ago. And now here we are a year out, and it's already increased substantially. So we are very fortunate to be in this position. I can tell you that other municipalities wish that they could go back and have taken a harder path. And that harder path was raising funds, was investing in infrastructure. The easy path was to sell their franchise rights to another organization. And now they find themselves in a position where they can't do anything to change. They can't change the rates. They can't change the flow. They can't get money for the infrastructure. It's a daunting problem. So we will definitely be mindful at all steps, you know, in terms of the impacts on our retirees. But we have to be mindful of the future of our community so that we don't find ourselves in a similar situation. So thank you, previous leadership, and thank you, you know, Michael and Kevin, for getting us to this point. And, you know, I wish that we had a different decision to make, but unfortunately, to go forward and provide for everyone in Florence and the people that would be coming to Florence and our children staying in Florence. These are the tough decisions that we have to make.
Thank you. Any council member? Any other questions? Okay. We have an audience member who wants to participate in the public hearing. You may stand, come forth. I will have to limit you to less than 5 minutes. So I need you to come forward for the mic so the audience can hear your question, though.
I just want
Will you
bring
please?
this full
Will you
circle.
please give your
My
name?
name is Martha Nance.
Thank you, Ms. Nance.
I just want to bring this full circle back to something that Ms. Runyon said. She talked about Duke Energy raising the rates. I don't know about y'all, but my insurance is going up, my car insurance and my house insurance. And I think you've made the case for why we need the water. So, like Ms. Runyon said, you do represent us. And so, what can you do to mitigate this for us? I mean, you've already raised our property tax 8%. Was that not something you could consider when you were going to ask for this increase with the water? That is a step. I took a retired educator, and it's just not working out. I mean, the numbers just aren't working out.
Thank you, Ms. Nance.
Thank you.
And just to reiterate, at this time when, as you know, yes, the numbers are going up, but when it comes to the rate where we're at now, time has predicted this. Our water system has said this is what we need. We always take those factors in play. And just so you know that if we could address this in any other manner, we would. But as stated, the water treatment plants, our utilities, that's a whole separate entity. And what we do, we have consultants who comes in every 10 years. So this is not new. Every 10 years, they come and reevaluate where we're at, what do we need, and how will we cover this. With the increase that you stated about, I do want to acknowledge that the city of Florence, even though when we have a millage increase, we credit back around 70% of that goes back to give you credit on your taxes so you don't pay those full taxes. So we always do all that we can to mitigate the circumstances because all of us, as you stated, yes, we're working class. Yes, we have the same taxes, and no, we don't want to see them go up either. So we'll always do our best to try to make sure that the rates are at the lowest possible level. But thank you both to Ms. Runyon and to Ms. Nance, because I know your statements are also reflective of a lot of how a lot of us feel about the rates. Know that we have no joy in increasing these rates, but we know that the circumstances that we're in right now calls for it. And if we could do something differently, we would have. And just as acknowledged here, we do have a former mayor, Rocky Pierce, in the house, and I know he understands where we're at too. So once again, thank you for that. And at this time, if there's no other questions, we can prepare to close this public hearing if there's no objections. So at this time, our public hearing is coming to a close. Thank you, Mr. Robinson.
Thank you, Mayor.
At this time, we'll proceed with our agenda. We have appearances before councils, and I will ask that each one who appear, please limit all of your presentation to within 5 minutes. First, we will have Ms. Stacy Beelan and, if present, Mr. Buddy Dawkins, and I believe so. Will you please come forward? And they will speak to the council regarding pickleball and to provide highlights. Please come forward.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. The mayor, city council members.
Let me ask one thing. If you want, do you have 2 of those?
You have 3 of them.
Okay, we can't get you on. Put one in front of this right here. These put me because you can't see it. I want them to see your posters on there. And yeah, if you can lean them against that arm, move over a little bit more. I'm trying to get you in camera there. And put one right in front of the desk this way where Ms. Councilman Smith is, and that way the public can see it on camera for you as well. Thank you. And you come in closer to him so we can get you in the shot too.
Yeah.
Now we can.
It's live.
Yes. We got you there. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I reclaim my time.
And look, you can reclaim your time. We're now starting for the presentation.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Again, to the mayor, city council, we thank you for this opportunity that you've allowed us to come before you. We are here to formally introduce pickleball to the city of Florence. My name is Stacy Beelan. I am the current president we have been here since 2015. Pickleball has been here, and we have accumulated over 300 plus members, and we are still growing. Pickleball is not just a sport. You know, it's you hear about it a lot on television now. It is the fastest growing sport in America, or worldwide, nationwide. It is not just for the older people, but younger people. Just a quick story. I have a 17-year-old who's a senior this year at Darlington High School. And through pickleball, because what we've learned was older people do nurture younger people. And through pickleball, my daughter has loved the game, but she now loves to interact with the older people. It's been a gap bridger, and we try to find ways to bridge gaps between the older folk and the younger folk, because contrary to belief, the younger have something to offer to the older as well as the older to the younger. So thank God for that. Our goal, or some of the goals that we have, are to promote health and fitness, to create partnerships, to offer clinics and camps, to give back to the community, to support local charities. We have so many testimonies of people that have retired and had health conditions because they were doing nothing. They played pickleball, came out, and just hit a little wiffle ball one time, and they're still hitting it. And because they came out and began to hit that ball, they got active. They became active, and through their activity, blood pressures have gone down, sugars have increased, A1Cs have gone down. So we do thank God for pickleball, because again, it's not just a sport just to go and sweat on, but it does promote, again, with your health initiative, promotes health and fitness, creates partnerships, and we offer clinics and camps, not just to older people, but we also do a kids clinic. Again, we're also partnering with Williams Middle School. We go in there on their club day, and we have pickleball there. We're teaching the kids pickleball. We give it back to the community, and we also support local charities. Again, we can't help everybody, but we do the best we can. Florence has given us an opportunity to play this game that we love, and what you see out here, right, is maybe just a tenth of what's out there at Timrock Park, a tenth of what's at Pearl Moore. It used to be crowded in the mornings, but in the afternoons when you all get off, if you ride by on a Tuesday night or a Thursday night, a Monday night, you will see people out there playing pickleball. They're not out there, acting up, but they're playing pickleball. They're socializing. They're in there. They're getting healthy. Because again, if we want to have better water, a better quality of life, that also comes with exercise and fitness. So we do that. We play hard, we give back, which is the last one. We have tournaments. Our tournaments we've donated breast cancer awareness. We're doing a United Way tournament. And these are fundraisers that we accumulate money and funds to give back to the community, through pickleball. Also, we've given to the Salvation Army. We are part of Help for Kids, the Humane Society, the City of Florence Coat Drive, Chesterfield Lighthouse Ministries. When COVID hit and there were churches that were struggling because of whatever reason, for the ones that we could, we had an opportunity, because again, we were blessed to have pickleball. We're blessed to have people that are concerned, that love one another and love other people. We were able to assist in some of those areas. So again, we just want to formally introduce pickleball to the city of Florence, and thank you all for allowing us to play this great game that we all love. Thank you.
And thank you. I'm going to ask that you remain here. Stacey, I'm going to ask that you remain here for some questions there. Let's keep you here.
Can you tell us how to get in touch with you?
So we have our website.
Before we proceed to the audience, we've got to respectfully address our council. But before you leave, would you give them the information about how to contact you?
Yes, ma'am.
But Chair, I need to recognize Councilman Smith.
thank you for coming. You said a lot, but I think the biggest thing is all that you do. If anyone does not know, pickleball is a heck of a workout. It is for all ages. I actually recently saw one on ESPN. To say that it's the fastest growing sport, and this group, this community has brought it to Florence. This is what makes Florence great. Thank you. My biggest question, and I really want the public to know, when is y'all's next event so they can come out and kind of celebrate with you and see what you all do and see how the sport is?
We'll have our next event, so our kids clinic, which we do every fourth Saturday of the month. That's from 12 to 2. Kids ages 5 to 17. We bring them out and we're teaching them the sport of pickleball. Our next tournament, which is the United Way fundraiser, that is September the 16th. That's the third Saturday in September. And then after that, we'll have our breast cancer, who is headed by Jackie Dawkins and Jackie and Cindy Dawkins. Please raise your hands. That is in October, the 16th and 17th, I think it is. The 14th and 15th. And those, so those are great. But if one wants to just come out on a Saturday morning, right? Bring some water, bring a lawn chair, sit and relax yourself. And if you have any questions, this is a beautiful thing about it. If you walk on the court and you ask somebody, hey, how do you play this game? Quick story to answer your question. I was riding by, because I sell life insurance as well. I was riding by doing some scouting, right, prospecting, sorry. And one evening I stopped and I had on my flip-flops. And so Buddy Dawkins, I stopped, talked to him. He said, listen, try it one time. Try it one time. And I'm still trying it. And that was 5 years ago. I went to Mayo High School, played basketball, loved basketball. Pickleball is my life after basketball. So, yes.
Thank you. Please bring forward. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Neesmith Jackson.
And I'm going to tell you, before 6 months ago, I've never heard of pickleball. I'm like, what is a pickleball? And you're right, it's now all over the TV, it's everywhere, and it is the fastest growing sport. And one thing I do like about it is low impact, and it promotes the community health and wellness. And we all know a body that's in motion stays in motion, so this definitely helps promotes that, and especially more viability within our seniors. So keep up the good work. Please let us know what we can do. But I also want to know how you can get involved with the pickleball. And you say just come out on a Saturday?
Come out on any day of the week. Right? We're playing Saturday. Well, we do have a Facebook page. Go to Florence Pickleball, the Facebook page, and that has all of the events that we're going, that we'll be promoting, that we'll be doing. We also have clinics for beginners on Wednesdays. When it's not hot, when it's not too hot, we are at Pearl Moore, because again, we have to be mindful, just as you all are, about your constituents in Florence County. We are mindful about our constituents that play pickleball, right? So if it's too hot outside, we get heat exhaustion, and then those things happen. So we have clinics that we offer on Wednesday mornings from Karen and Rick. They do those, and their assistants. Right now, this current clinic, we have 25 members. And that's at Timrod. When it's too hot or raining, they're at Pearl Moore. I do clinics as well, but we'll connect with me through Facebook. It's another level that we do. But again, mornings and evenings, someone's out there playing pickleball. And I think we're trying to. Well, I'll talk to you later on. But yes.
At this time, the chair recognizes Councilwoman Barnes.
Yes. I thank you all so much. I've taken the camp with Rick and Karen, and I tell you, you all are not just a group of people. You all are a loving community. When I got out there, it was nothing but love. Everybody was so helpful, and Rick picked at me the entire time. He had something to say the entire time. But as this is a growing sport, and we want to be on the cutting edge of water and everything else, I'm hoping that in our recreation that we will also continue to be on the cutting edge of sports. And this is it. This is it. And so I really do love it, and I must say, when I walked in there, you're intimidated. You see all of these people, but I got nothing but love from everybody. I got help. I even got paddles at my house from people. Hey, you want to play? I got some paddles you can use. Don't buy paddles. And so it is a great thing. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Pro Tem.
So thank you for coming. Appreciate it. And thank you to all of you for being here. This is citizen participation, and this is what it's all about. And trust me, we're paying attention. Okay, we are all paying attention to it. But I have to, while I know many of you out there, there's a couple of you out there that, and I was tackled by Philip over here when I first walked in, but I would be remiss if I didn't point to Jim Canuck, who I played volleyball with for many, many years, and Jim has been harassing me with text messages saying, dude, you got to do pickleball. So I hear you, Jim. And just thank you for all that you do, and we're very excited as a council with the whole movement, and I feel sure that you'll get great support from us.
What I'm going to ask before you leave, for those who are here with the pickleball, do you want to stand so that the audience members, if they can see you, so if they have any questions, they can approach you? Would you please stand? Thank you for that, and to Stacy, thank you as well. And just so that our general audience would know, the city, we have been working with organizations trying to improve the home for them here in the city of Florence. So we thank you for all that you're doing and your willingness to not only continue to promote the sport, but also trying to create an environment where it can grow and be safe to be performed as well. So thank you. We appreciate it. You're welcome.
Thank you.
At this time, we will move forward with our agenda. Next, we'll enter into our ordinance in position. First, I don't know if they can. Thank you. As they're preparing to leave out, we will still move forward with our ordinance in position. You're welcome. And the ordinance that we will be preparing to look at will be Bill number 2023-25 that will be up for a second reading.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. At this time, is there any discussion? We're going to ask that our attorney come forward at this time. Come forward.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor and members of council. Further to the discussion that was held at last month's meeting, Mr. Osterman convened a meeting of some stakeholders in this animal control issue back at the end of July. It included several members of council. It included Chief Heidler. It included representatives of the Humane Society, Ms. Jane Boswell, Ms. Carrington Wingard, as well as the city prosecutor. And some revisions were discussed and agreed upon to the ordinance. And in your packet this month, you've got a red line version of that ordinance showing the changes that this group recommended. Let me go through just the high points with you, if I may, and I'll be glad to answer any questions. Again, as I think I said last month, the thrust of this whole effort has been a concern with balancing public safety, good order, with the rights of animals and their owners. And I think this council and committee, not really a committee, sort of an informal committee, has done a great job in trying to strike that balance. As y'all are aware, the ordinance basically has three separate provisions, one dealing with nuisance animals and two dealing with dangerous animal definition, and then dangerous animal enforcement. If you look at Exhibit A in the red line, or in the clean version, if you don't have the red line in front of you, one of the changes the committee has recommended is that the determination of a dangerous animal be vested across the board in a city magistrate. There was some concern expressed that because the remedies are so extreme in certain cases with dangerous animals, that it would be best to have a city judge declare an animal a dangerous animal in all circumstances. So that was added to the first part of the definition of dangerous animal in 3-2 Exhibit A. And then in Section 5, there was some concern about an animal being determined to be dangerous if it attacks someone without actually making contact with them, without actually harming the person. So we added the term in a reasonably menacing fashion. We just had a menacing fashion, and it was agreed that what might be menacing to one person may not be menacing to another. So we just established a rule of reason with respect to that provision of the dangerous animal determination. In Exhibit B, we added to the feral animal being a public nuisance. Ms. Boswell pointed out that there is a feral animal rehabilitation program that the animal shelter engages in, and we agreed that the best sort of limiting factor on feral animals was it would have to be a feral animal that has not been spayed or neutered. So that's been proposed. One of the most discussed topics is 3-7-9, which is the barking dog provision. And after a lot of discussion, it was agreed to add that the barking of the dog or the meowing of the cat and other animal noises has to be without good cause or provocation. If someone's breaking into your house and your dog's barking, you shouldn't be penalized for that. And then the time frames were deemed to be unacceptable, and so we have simplified that to continuously, incessantly, or intermittently making that noise for an hour. We simplified that. Finally, we made some changes to the penalties in nuisance under E on the next page. First offense is a written warning. Second offense is $100. And third offense is $200. Again, this is just for the nuisance animals. Exhibit C, dangerous animal enforcement. Again, we provided that a city judge has to declare any dangerous animal to be a dangerous animal. It can't be done by the ACO. It can't be done by the animal shelter. And then we made provision that an animal that the ACO or law enforcement reasonably believe to be dangerous can be impounded. Pending that determination, we have a notice provision. This is in 3-11C2. We have a notice provision to the owner of the animal. And then if you flip over 2 pages, the next to the last provision we've actually added. This is a whole new provision that allows a city judge to make an initial determination that an animal is a dangerous animal ex parte, that is without notice to the other party or without the owner participating. But once that initial determination is made, then notice has to be given to the owner. The owner then has an opportunity to come forward and contest that. And if the owner doesn't contest that, then the determination of a dangerous animal becomes final. And then we cite to Section 611 of the code for an owner's ability to appeal that. So I think we've thoroughly scrubbed this ordinance for second reading. The changes that I just went over, all the changes in that red line are recommended by this informal group. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Chair recognizes Councilman Smith.
We had a great discussion between council and everyone that was in the room. I was actually a part of that meeting. And I know we had a long debate about many different things. I think we're doing I think the bigger thing is for me on this is all about public safety. So with that being said, I'm going to make a motion to amend Bill 20235, Bill 2023-25 to reflect the changes shown by Mr. Ziegler that are outlined in red. But however, as a part of this amendment, I want to strike section 3-79.
Second.
Let us take a look at 3. Say those numbers again, please.
I would be more than happy to read that for you. If you'd
Yes.
like, or go over.
And you say it's section 37-9?
Yes.
And yes, please read it.
Exhibit B, the owning, possession, or harboring of any animal which without good cause frequently or for continued duration howls, barks, meows, squawks, or makes other sounds which create excessive and unnecessary noise across a residential or commercial real property line or within a noise-sensitive area. For the purpose of this chapter, barking dog shall mean a dog that barks, bays, cries, howls, and makes any other noise continuously, incessantly, or intermittently for a period of 1 hour or more to the disturbance of any person at any time, day or night, regardless of whether the dog is physically situated in or upon private property.
We have a motion and a second on that. And so at this time, we're going to entertain discussion. Chip.
Excuse me, can we talk? I signed up to talk about this.
Well, when we get into discussion, I'll come before. Right now, we have an active motion of trying to see how this is going to be presented for you to be able to discuss it. So at this time, the chair recognizes Councilman Jabali.
If I understood the motion and the second that's presented, and this is a question to you, Mr. Ziegler, it would be to approve the ordinance with the red lines, but it would exclude paragraph 9.
Paragraph 9 would be struck as part of the amendment.
But all the other red lines would remain.
Yes, sir. That's my understanding.
I just wanted to make sure I understood what we were looking at. Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion on that? Chair recognizes Councilwoman Nee Smith Jackson.
Well, I'm say this, and I was part of this conversation as well. I want to make sure that we're creating the framework in which policies and guidelines can be enforced. This barking came to me a while ago. And I'm more focused on creating a framework that is fair for both parties. And when I think about someone not being able to enjoy their property because, maybe there's a dog barking, when we creating a time and a framework is based on when someone can complain, when someone can call. So this was the purpose in the times to create this framework. We all understand that dogs are vocal. They communicate by barking. I see dogs as, again, forever babies. They can't communicate but by barking. Barking is to allow you to, there's potential threat, boredom, anxiety, seeking attention. There's many reasons that dogs bark. But at the end of the day, understanding that it is dangerous for this dog to be barking incessantly for 30 minutes. It causes strain on their vocal cords and their throats, which were not designed for constant barking for 30 minutes and more or less an hour. So when I think about this, it's not fair when you have a dog that could be possibly stuck, in danger, harm, or whatever, and that dog has to alert you for over an hour for someone to understand that this dog needs help, to me is not very fair. Nor is it to the folks that are not being able to enjoy their homes. Now, dog barking is essentially not just the responsibility of a dog, and it's not the dog's fault. But if a dog does bark that long, it is a reason why. And we need to find out why. Because a dog just does not bark for an extended period of time unless there is a reason. And finding that underlying reason is important for the safety of the animals. So when we're talking about public safety, we also have to look on dog safety as well. Is it good for the dog to continuously bark like this? What is the underlying issues? And as a responsible dog owner, which I am now in the category because we have a little Shih Tzu puppy, Lexi, and I can't imagine Lexi barking for hours and nobody not calling. That's just like your child is barking for hours and nobody is paying attention. So it's not just on public safety, it's also on the safety of that dog because there is underlying issues if your dog is barking for this period of time.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion from the council members?
So,
Chair recognizes Councilman Smith.
So I do feel that in a sense, if we do not allow a dog to bark for a certain amount of time, they cannot alert that elderly person that they are protecting. That is my feeling and my belief. Dogs are more than family. Sometimes they are safety for our elderly. So if they cannot alert them properly in the way that they know how to do and bark, or a cat may meow because somebody may be there, I just feel like that's not right. I don't think we should be able to govern them in a nuisance ordinance on how their dog should protect them.
At this time, I will take the speakers from our public who signed up to speak. We have Mr. Lance Weldon who signed up to speak on this art. Mr. Weldon, will you please come forward?
Hello.
Hello.
Lance Weldon. I'm sorry for being impatient. I don't come to these often, and so I was just getting a little nervous that we weren't going to be able to be heard, but I apologize for being the impatient one. So I've lived in District 1 since 2008. I've been keeping track of the current conversation about the ordinance regarding dangerous dogs. I watched portions of last month's City Council meeting, and I just wanted to quickly let you know why voting to approve the noise ordinance amendment, specifically point 9, which is in connection to the dogs, is important to our community. On July 21st, I emailed the City Council a longer version of this statement, but for the sake of time, I will only read highlights of it here. I can understand the hesitancy of some council members who may have only heard of this noise amendment while at the last meeting, but the amendment is necessary. Obviously, I wrote this before. I may have to revise some of this. Currently, the city ordinance mentions animal noises in 2 different places. The section on public nuisance under section 3-7, item 9, and the section on noise under section 10-10, item 1. The language for both ordinances is vague, subjective, and calls for negligible accountability on the part of the pet owners. For years, I have been patiently dealing with community members who are violating these ordinances. Dean Art, the supervisor of the Florence Animal Control, admitted that the current ordinance is, quote, really vague, before telling me that a public nuisance, quote, would be 8 to 10 hours of continuous nonstop barking. Yeah. When I saw that Florence Animal Control was not willing to help, I turned to my city council representative, and asked that the city ordinance on noise and public barking be revised to include specific language from South Congaree's and West Columbia's ordinance. There is already precedent from these 2 different cities on how to make all Florence residents better neighbors by defining terms and establishing what amount of time constitutes a violation. The amendment of 379 is not saying that a barking dog automatically violates the noise ordinance. Rather, it's saying that a dog that barks for a specified amount of time is violating the noise ordinance. Both the ordinance amendments about dangerous and barking dogs are important and necessary to our community to be safer and peaceful. And I will add to this, from what I've just heard, that I am really concerned about striking the whole 379 for a couple of reasons. I was not happy with the hour as well, but I can get to just looking specifically at those places. The specific language from South Congaree and West Columbia says, if I can get it here, it says, a dog that bays, cries, all that stuff, for a period of 10 minutes or barks intermittently for 1/2 hour or more to the disturbance of any person at any time, day or night, regardless of whether the dog is physically situated in or upon private property. I will say, have you ever been barked at for 10 straight minutes in your parking lot in your car with the people next door not doing anything? These are not elderly people either. I would say if this is an elderly situation, you go over there and you check on them or you call on them. That's not what this is about. This is continuous. This is on more than one occasion. Being barked at for a specific amount of time, 10 minutes straight. If you have ever been that way, please let me know. Because that does something to you repeatedly. It does something to you psychologically. It does something to you physically. It's not fun for just being on your own property. And that's why I have been trying to do my civic duty and go to these specific people, And then when that doesn't work, I try to get help from Florence Animal Control. That obviously didn't work, and so I'm trying to go to you now and say, I would wholeheartedly request that you keep that time frame in, and I would request that you keep it to the 10 minutes for continuous and 30 minutes intermittently. Because if you don't, you're basically saying it's okay for your neighbor's dog to bark for 10 minutes straight. And I have a hard time believing you think that it's okay for a dog to be barking for 10 minutes straight with the adults at that place doing nothing. So, I believe I said all that. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate that. And I guess, do I just stay up here to give responses?
I'm going to ask that you stay for a moment while I see if the council has some questions. Chair, do you want to recognize Councilman Smith?
So I didn't hear your name before you came.
I'm Lance Weldy.
Mr. Weldy, am I saying that correct? Thank you for coming. Also, thank you for reaching out to your city representative. You did the proper way, I will say. But what I do want to say, and what I stated previously was, that is what we have it now is in a public nuisance portion of an ordinance, not where the other municipalities have it in a noise ordinance. Okay? That is the biggest difference that I think you really need to understand. Now, we could look at it in a noise ordinance. We could, but I don't feel good about putting it as a public nuisance.
Okay.
All right. Thank you again. Honestly, I understand where you're coming from. I've owned dogs all of my life, German Shepherds to be exact. So I understand when dogs bark, German Shepherds bark loud. I understand sometimes that it does create a noise ordinance for your neighbors, but that is a public safety issue for our elderly man. That is not in a noise ordinance. Excuse me. This is in the nuisance and not the noise. Okay. Thank you.
I'm glad you said that, and that's something I was also the wheels were turning in my head. That I was a little bit concerned though that it would get shot down in Section 10 on noise, just as it's got shot down in public nuisance. But I would be willing to visit that to present it there as well. I know we'll have to do that there, but I appreciate your saying that. I'm glad you reminded me as the wheels were going that I would be open to that possibility. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Councilman McCall.
Yeah, man, I guess Councilman Smith stole my thunder. I was ready to move that line. But again, I think I wasn't in the informal committee that met, but when this initially started, this was for public safety regarding it was a major instance regarding dogs attacking people, and then I think this part came up as well. But it's my understanding that this is more so of a noise ordinance, particular type of thing. I'm not opposed to addressing it in that ordinance, but here I think we need to move forward on actually taking a look at it from a public safety standpoint, and then address this potentially maybe in a noise ordinance at some other time. Okay. But I've been hearing it on both sides. I've been hearing it from people talking about their concern about the dogs barking. And I've been hearing about also on the opposite side of dog owners feeling as if this might be too intrusive on their private rights. So I think this addressing here public safety first, and we can look at this as some other ordinance.
It's just kind of confusing. The language of the wording is allowing them to bark for a continuous amount of time. So that's why it's kind of interesting. But there's only two places. So yeah, I definitely get your point there.
Yep. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Neesmith Jackson.
Thank you so much, Lance, for coming here, for your concern, for your commitment, and for really wanting to enjoy your place, as we all do. And whether it's in public nuisance or noise, noise is noise, and it's a nuisance. Noise, extended periods of noise can be a nuisance, whether it's loud music, people talking, crying, fussing, dogs barking. It's a nuisance wherever it is. And we shouldn't, if we have to put it in noise, then this is the time to do it now. I do not believe in striking it and coming back for this later. So if it does not need to be in public nuisance, then yes, I make a motion to put it into the noise. But either way, it needs to be a framework created so that issues can be addressed. Residents just like yours, Lance, there needs to be a place where it can be addressed. So if it's not public nuisance, fine. put it in noise, but there needs to be a framework. It needs to be policy and guidelines created to address these issues. And I stand by that.
And I would, again, reinforce that the language from these other ordinances is what I would want with the 10 minutes and 30 minutes.
And at this time, we have, Ben, I'm going to need you up here. I want you to come forward. The Councilwoman, so you're making a motion that the section, which is 37-9, be amended and placed into.
We've got the other motion has to be decided.
Yeah, that was in.
The motion to amend from Councilman Smith has been moved and seconded, so that needs to be decided before.
Yeah, I want to restate what she's stating, because that's what she stated. But we had a motion on the floor that has been motioned to be amended, and the amendment was the 37-9 being removed, and it was second. So we have that motion, so we need to go ahead and vote on that, whether or not we're going to approve that. Then when we do that, then she can amend.
Yes, ma'am, or if what Councilman Smith Jackson is talking about is going into Section 10 of the Code of Ordinances, which is the noise ordinance, that would have to be done by a whole separate ordinance. So my recommendation would be do what you're going to do with this animal control ordinance and then come back and revisit the noise ordinance in a separate enactment.
And since we're in discussion, Councilwoman, do you have any concerns? Because we have a motion on the floor right now that we have to
I have
address.
a concern, and my concern is that this does not fall out in our concerns of our constituents get addressed.
Okay, so based on that discussion, what we could do is have the council to look at that ordinance to have that presented at a later time of next month or wherever when y'all work in between. Is that feasible for you?
Yes.
Okay, so is it, all right, while we're still discussing the amended part of this, Chair will recognize Councilwoman Barnes, following Councilwoman Barnes, Councilman Bailey. In that order, please. Oh, you raised your hand. Okay, Councilman Braddock.
The only thing I wanted to state is that we were going to have to do this anyway, because we were going to have, if we would have passed it in the nuisance ordinance, we would have had two opposing ordinances in regards to dog noise, and that's why I'm supportive of removing it out of this ordinance, and I would be supportive in moving it in some fashion into the noise ordinance. But we were going to have to address it anyway. We were creating a problem by having it in two locations at the same time.
Chair recognizes Councilman Bailey.
No, my question was answered by Mr. Ziegler.
All right. Does that conclude the discussion on the amendment? Okay. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And opposed, like sign. Next, a nay. Okay, 2 nays then. All right. So the ordinance has been amended to remove 37-9. Now we need to vote.
And to make the changes, as I understood it, to make the changes that are reflected in the red line, in addition to remove 379.
All right. So now we're at a place where we'll be voting upon the changes as submitted in the red areas with the second reading, which will include the removal of section 3-7-9. That is position. That is the motion for the second reading. Okay.
So moved.
All right.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. And opposed, like sign. Let it reflect that this ordinance has passed second reading with all changes as noted unanimously. Next, we'll move to bill number 2023-26 for a second reading. It's an ordinance to provide the issuance of sales of combined waterworks and sewage system revenue bonds of the city of Florence, South Carolina, and other matters related thereto. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right. At this time, we'll hear from Mr. Kevin Rollison.
All right. This ordinance, again, is the bond issue for the AESC Economic Development Project, utility engineering and master planning, surface water treatment plant expansion for the planning and designing of that project, and the automated water meters for billing.
Do We have the motion second. Is there any discussions? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign. Let it reflect bill number 2023-26 has passed second reading. Next, we have bill number 2023-27 for a second reading. It's an ordinance revising the water and sewage rate schedule for the city of Florence, South Carolina. Do we have a motion?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion that we discuss this in executive session.
We have a motion to discuss this item in executive.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign. All right.
Mayor, may I,
Yes, sir.
Councilman Braddock, the law requires that.
Legally, yeah,
that
legally.
a statement be made why it needs to be executive.
Yes, sir. It came up in a city-county meeting in regards to water tap fees and the legality of water tap fees being changed or different between residential and commercial
So is this
outside of the city
So
limits.
is this receive legal advice?
Yes,
Is
sir.
it- Okay,
Yeah.
so
To see if that would even potentially be an option. Maybe not even today, but in the future. But it would relate to today's vote.
So going into executive session for the receipt of legal advice covered by the attorney-client privilege.
Correct, yes, sir. Yes.
That sounds better.
I'm just going to add that item to our executive session here, so we'll be sure to follow when we come back out. Okay. Next item on our agenda is bill number 2023-28 for a second reading. It's an ordinance to amend the budget of the city of Florence, South Carolina for the fiscal year beginning July the 1st, 2022 and ending June the 30th, 2023.
So moved.
We have a motion and second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. And opposed, like sign. Let it reflect that this bill has passed second reading. Next, we have bill number 2023-29 for a second reading. It's an ordinance to abandon a portion of a sewer line in an easement location on private property at 1411 Gulf Terrace Boulevard, identified as Florence County Tax Map number 0010-01-470. We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion and second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye, please. Aye. Let it reflect the bill has passed second reading. Next, we'll move into introduction of ordinances. The first one is bill number 2023-16 for first reading. It's an ordinance to adopt redistricting plan for 3 single-member districts of the city of Florence, South Carolina, in accordance with the federal annual census of 2020. We have a note that this item can be taken into executive session. Do we have?
Motion to put it in executive session.
And do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. Let it reflect that this item will be held in executive session for the purpose as well as for legal advice. Next, we have bill number 2023-30 for first read. It's an ordinance to annex and zone NC 152488 Abbey Way, identified as Florence County Tax Map number 01221-01-247. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion is second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we can have a report from Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. This is a request to annex and zone property numbers 01221-01-247, which is 2488 Abbey Way, into the city limits and zone NC 15. This is an existing lot within the Windsor Forest subdivision. It's an infill property, a donut hole essentially. So this will be annexed and then later build a new home, single-family residence on it.
Any discussion? Chair recognizes Pro Tem.
Quickly, Clint, if you go back to the other map that you had up, the property down in the wedge down at the bottom, what is that?
That is the property along Hoffmeyer that has the brick fence
Yes.
adjacent to Windsor Forest.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign. Let it reflect that the bill has passed first reading. Next, we'll move to Bill number 2023-31 for a first reading. It's an ordinance to rezone a portion of Florence County Tax Map number 90030-02-007 from a PUD to a AC. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, at this time, we'll hear from Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. This is a rezoning request to amend the zoning map to reflect the PDD, which is a split zone parcel. The PDD portion is the green highlighted area, to zone it AC, which is in complements to the rest of the property there. We do have a little bit of history with this property. So back in February 8th of 2022, it initially came before council, went to planning commission, received a unanimous approval there, then followed by city council, and the applicant withdrew their request prior to council action. Again, on July 12th, 2022, it went before planning commission and was then denied at that time. And then here recently at planning commission, the rezoning request was before planning commission, and a unanimous vote was given for that property. To give a little background on that property, it was previously two separate lots and was recently combined. The planned development portion of that property was zoned back in 1989 and through time, and that was during our combined planning and zoning with Florence County. Those development standards were lost and not kept up, so we do not have any record whatsoever for those development standards. We do know that it does permit commercial development on the property, because the adjacent property, which is here, is a part of that planned development and was previously developed commercially. Right now, the owner wishes to rezone that property to essentially straighten the zoning portion out and create more marketability for the property. We could not at this time review or approve any projects associated with that, because we do not have any development standards. So it's certainly staff's recommendation that we zone this and clean up that zoning designation so that development could occur on that property.
Prior to question, council, we do have someone who wishes to speak for that, so I'll ask that we honor to have that individual speak, and then if we have any questions, we can pose from there too. Let me see. Mr. Matt Scalias signed to appear before us on this issue.
My name is Matt Scalise, and I'm the agent for the owners of the property on Second Loop Road. It's basically a vacant 4-acre site, and they've owned the property for approximately 20 years. And when they purchased the property, they were reassured that when the time came to develop the property or do something with it, that it would just be a formality to have it rezoned. So we went into it knowing that it was a split zoning, but it could be easily clarified when the time came to develop the property. In the meantime, they've been paying their taxes at the tune of about $22,000 a year for over $400,000 to the city of Florence. So at this point, all they want to do is basically be able to rezone it to where it makes sense to a potential buyer or developer. And they don't, right at this point in time, there's not a buyer or development plan in place. But no one will consider purchasing this property or doing anything with it, and until they can get clarification on the zoning, what can and can't be done. The subject property it's already zoned AC, except for a minority of the rear portion of the property is zoned PDD. PDD, as stated, it's not properly defined as far as the rules and regulations for that rear portion of the property.
and the rules don't exist. And all we ask is to be able to have one zoning for the property as a commercial and eliminate the split zoning situation. One of the concerns in the past was spot zoning. This would not constitute spot zoning because it's already zoned AC. The guidelines dictate if rezoned AC, there would still be a 25-foot landscape buffer yard in the rear required for the residential zoning. And most of the residential that backs up to this property, it already has privacy fences in place. Lastly, any development would have to comply with the setbacks, planning, zoning, stormwater requirements, and there are the variety of permitted uses as well as uses with certain special conditions that would all have to comply with all the city rules and regulations. But the current status of the property is effectively holding the property hostage while the owners can't do anything with it and they're paying their taxes. And it's almost like effectively taking property, and it's almost as if the city's exercising their power of eminent domain without actually compensating the owners for the property. That's all they ask, and just appreciate your consideration.
At this time, I ask that you remain present before we move forward. Chair will recognize Councilwoman E. Smith Jackson.
My question is actually for Clint. And I saw that there was no development, use, or building standards, and you answered it and said it were lost. What are we going to do from this point on?
So the reason for the rezoning is to reclassify that portion of the property so that we do have development standards that we can then review and improve the projects by. And with this rezoning, it's important that we look at, and if you can pull it up, this is, we're considering the zoning designation. So this is portion of the property is already zoned activity center, and the uses allowed in that area. Derek, if you could pull the PowerPoint up, please. Are located along this column here. So it permits things such as schools. I'll look here; it's a little bit easier to look at. Looks at commercial amusement type things, but most importantly, it focuses around some of the commercial uses, such as animal grooming facilities, as well as automobile repair. So that obviously this is a very standard commercial development zoning designation that is common throughout the city. And the desire from the applicant is to simply clean that up so that we can move forward with a potential project should there be one come up.
How many parcels do we have that's under that designation of PDD where we have no development, use, or building standards?
So plan development, although it's not recently used very commonly now because the state has clearly defined what a plan development must be, which is must have commercial use, must have mixed use residential. There's been a clear decision on that. So we do have a lot of older plan developments that were left from decades ago. So this is certainly unique where it is a split zone parcel and not very common where we would come across something like this.
Chair recognizes Councilman Braddock.
Clint, can you pull up the first image first and then the second with the different zonings?
Yes.
So what is the zoning? Is the zoning to the right? Everything in blue, is that all AC?
That's correct.
Everything in blue is AC? Okay. And so would it have to be all zoned AC, or is NC 61 or NC 62? Could it go either one of those routes since it's connected to those? What are the options in terms of which zoning it goes to? Is AC the only option?
I think the request could certainly be made for residential zoning. I don't know that it would, given the directed adjacent property is commercial. That's another portion of plan development. That would be a decision planning commission would make. staff would need to review that more closely to make that determination. But with, you bring up a good point that there are a little bit of residential uses adjacent to the property. With our new Unified Development Ordinance and with this new activity center zoning, there's a large increase in the buffer yard requirements that will buffer that portion between the residential property and whatever that commercial use may be, where there currently isn't one along all of the existing development along through there. So I think any issues regarding commercial activity in residential would be answered between the requirements of the buffer yard.
And if you would pull up the different zonings real quick.
The use, this
Yeah.
table, yes.
So it could not go to like a different usage like anything else like CA or CR.
No.
It would have to either go AC or a residential type.
That's right. So it will, in order to match the remaining portion of the property, we certainly recommend the AC zoning. Anything else would have to take the same route that this property has taken as far as making that request to Planning Commission and then following the City Council.
So what's the stuff? I know the big concerns with the neighboring community, the last time this property came up was they were looking at a LIHTC housing.
Multifamily.
Yeah, multifamily, affordable housing solution. What was to, if we were to go all AC, what is to protect the neighboring communities? If that situation came up again, would there be any path to stop, to not allow something like that the surrounding areas were not in favor of, or would we be kind of opening up Pandora's box, so to speak, and there not be any way to mitigate a usage of that property that wasn't then consistent with what the neighbors?
I think that is a matter that comes up frequently, regardless of a rezoning or not. So, that's very often brought up. With any commercial development is you have a vacant land, piece of property, now is getting developed, and the impacts to the neighboring properties, their concerns from the residents. That was one of the major reasons we implemented everything that we did within the Unified Development Ordinance to mitigate most of those concerns. So there will be, it's unavoidable to have that connection between residential and commercial. There's no way around that. That's going to happen. What our role is to put in development standards that help mitigate some of those concerns, such as, let's say, a large multifamily development comes to this property. We have things in place such as traffic studies and buffer yards and working with the developer one-on-one to mitigate those concerns. So we have implemented a lot of those within our code to answer those very questions and work with the adjacent residential homeowners.
Because I'm in agreement that I'm for property owner rights, and I think that the property is hung up because of how it's zoned, but I know what the constituents are going to say, and that is in my district, but the constituents are going to feel like, time has slipped by, and now, we passed this and opening up, a path for something to come in there that they would not be particularly favorable of. And so,
One of the benefits of the activity center zoning is that it calls for the development to be drawn forward to the major thoroughfare and put the stormwater facilities and any of the lighter type uses so that the buildings pull more forward to the main corridor, and it helps create that buffer and lower use in between the residential and the commercial use. So that is why along most of our corridors, Second Blue, Irby Street, a lot of those areas have that activity center zoning to help offset some of those concerns.
Is that complete for the councilman? Chair recognizes Pro Tem.
Clint, one of the other concerns that was raised is if it's a multi-use family residential facility, that the traffic at that in and out right there, because it's not very far away from the stoplight.
Right.
And so you have that close connection from the entrance in and out of that property to the stoplight. And if you have some form of residential that you have high density of people coming in and out, particularly, you know, at rush hour in the morning and then again in the evening, particularly in the morning time, that there may be some safety concerns. You have buses coming all in and along there as well. Is there anything in the code or anything in the city's policies and procedures that would require a traffic study to be done and approved by the city of Florence prior to any residential high density development taking place? And I think what Councilman Braddock was getting after is, if we say yes now, is there any further opportunity for the city to be involved and to put some measures in place that the residents had raised concerns about? And the one that I heard a lot about was the traffic issue and the safety issue. Again, we've been talking about safety here, and this goes back to safety as well.
Yes, we certainly do. So it's very much twofold as well. So the city, we certainly have our regulations and standards where when a development hits a certain threshold, we require a traffic study to be conducted. We review that and make certain that there's not going to be a decrease in the level of service and safety. But also DOT will review this additionally, and they will, if they have any requirements whatsoever, if they're concerned in the least bit, they'll put those in place to help mitigate some of those concerns. So.
Would it be such, and this is a question because I don't know the answer, would it be such that, let's say it was a high-density apartment complex of some sort, whether it's LIHTC or just say we as a city, that the staff just says, I'm sorry, we can't do that. Is that a potentiality?
Yes, so that would occur early on during the development review phase in working with DOT. So part of what a traffic study does is it essentially identifies if there is a problem. And if a problem exists or gets created because of the increased volume that would occur with the development, they would recommend the different changes to improve that or mitigate that issue. And we would work alongside DOT to select what that might be. Ultimately, if there are any improvements along Second Loop Road that would caused by this development or what potential development, that would be owned and maintained by the DOT, required to be put in by the developer, but owned by the DOT. So they would have a very close review, and a permit would not be issued unless those improvements were guaranteed.
And I think just the gist of what the concerns were is if it's just regular commercial development like the property next door, well, you have periodic one-offs of people coming in and out. It's not this mad rush all at one time coming in or mad rush all coming out at one time. And I think the concern was how significant that traffic impact would be. And I can just share with you and to all of staff that that is something, again, that City Council is very concerned about, to make sure that whatever development takes place is one that keeps at the forefront the traffic impact and the safety of the traveling public, because you have not only do you have the neighborhood behind it, but across the street you got Tarleton, and that's another in and out, very frequently used entrance and exit, and that we heard extensively from the residents of the Tarleton previously. and their focus was this traffic concern. So if you, on behalf of the staff, can give us that assurance that
Yes.
that will be addressed and that there will be mitigations there. Does that address your concern, Councilman Bryant?
Yeah, I mean,
Chair recognizes Councilman Braddock.
it didn't appear to me that, and I understand as a realtor marketing the property, it didn't appear to me to stop, the other project from trying and coming up for review. I feel like we have a safeguard put in place right now, and I don't know, I'm just not comfortable removing that safeguard and opening up Pandora's box, but I do agree that traffic is a big issue.
Matt, may I ask a question?
Go
My
ahead.
understanding is, under the current split zoning situation, there's a cloud of uncertainty on the property to where if someone were to submit for a permit to do something to develop that property, it would have to go through a rezoning process before they could proceed. It's my understanding. And there's hotels, bed and breakfast, restaurants, medical offices, any number of other uses that property could handle. My other point is, I'm sure I'm not an expert on the city of Florence zoning laws, but are there not zoning laws in Florence that would control the density to the point where it could speak to the traffic issue? And if there's are limitations from a zoning standpoint that would limit the density of the quantity of potential multifamily units, if that's the main concern, like previously the former deal that fell apart, it's not on the table now. They're not even in talks, any discussion whatsoever. It was only 40 units. You get some of these buildings properties along the Second Loop Road that have hundreds of people coming in and out every day. That particular project, which again is not on the table, was 40 units that were going to house people like school teachers, firefighters, police officers, and it seems like it's a lot of the density concerns and other concerns. Really and truly, it's just a matter of not in my backyard situation. Some of these concerns from the residents is just basically a situation where they just don't want to see a certain type element, certain people in their neighborhood, which really I think it's a shame. The city of Florence needs housing, and God forbid they want to have affordable housing that was going to be state subsidized. It doesn't seem like the end of the world to accommodate 40 hardworking people that need a helping hand. But again, that's not even what's on the table right now. But again, it's up from the zoning laws and limitations from a density standpoint, as well as all the safeguards that you've already commented that are in place. Should be an adequate safeguard to be able to say we can rezone this property, the entire parcel, 2/3 of which is already AC, to all of it AC. Of the remaining 1/3 in the rear, the back 25 feet of it, you couldn't do anything with because that would have to remain as a buffer. And then parking in the back, because the development, whatever that would be, whether it be a restaurant or a bed and breakfast or medical office building or what have you, would be pulled towards the front of the property with parking in the back to limit any impact on the residential area behind it.
Mr. Moore, can you answer that question? He questioned whether or not there's anything on the books that would address the...
Yes. So our code's very clear in what it permits as far as the density, especially with any level of multifamily or single family for that matter. So depending on the amount of property that you have, will be regulated to determine how many units you can have. Additionally, with parking requirements, stormwater requirements, with buffer yard requirements, all of those limit the use of the property to what we have seen is very reasonable throughout the city, which is again why we implemented the Unified Development Ordinance.
Chair recognizes Pro Tem.
I think maybe you misunderstood my question. It's the relationship of the entrance to the stoplight. if it was located in a different space vis-a-vis the stoplight, and particularly traffic that wants to come and make a left-hand turn in, coming through the stoplight, and then going to make an immediate left-hand turn off of Second Loop in, and the traffic then potentially backing up, and you have that congestion. So it deals more with the question of the congestion in its relationship to the stoplight. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Because it had nothing to do with the entity itself. It had everything to do with the frequency and the time period where you can have people coming in and coming out is going to be all at the same time.
But you don't
and
know,
its relationship
but
to
you
the
don't know when
stoplight.
people are coming and going. No more than you know how many people that are going to patronize a certain business. Name any number of businesses. People would be coming and going. The owners can't control, and the owners can't control the fact that the property is located where it's located. There's any number of businesses that could create a high amount of traffic throughout the day. And hypothetically, if there was a multifamily, a limited number of multifamily units on that property, again, they would be limited by the density dictated by the city, and none of us know the comings and goings of all those people. Some people work nights, some people work days. We don't know when all those people will be coming and going.
Well,
I mean,
you and I are going to have to agree to disagree, and I think most people who travel on Second Loop at the early morning hours would probably disagree with you as well on that, in terms of how the extent of the traffic, the congestion of the traffic right there. We're just going to have to agree to disagree.
So what are the owners supposed to do? Just continue to pay their taxes, and the city just holds the property hostage indefinitely?
Thank you for that, Pro Tem and Mr. Scalias. At this time, the chair recognizes Councilman Braddock.
Well, you kind of took a shot at the constituents and the residents living around there, and you're not from Florence, correct, sir?
That's correct.
You live at the beach.
That's correct.
And what goes in that space has no regard to you other than the commission that you make. And the people who live around that property, it is my responsibility to look out for their best interest, and that's what I'm going to do.
The people that own it have been residents here for over 20 plus years.
Okay. Well, I mean, they can market that property, and they can find something that the neighbors are pleased and excited about, and they can bring it before planning, and it can be rezoned, and that business can open there.
Any other question from council? At this time, Mr. Scalias, thank you for coming before us. We appreciate it. At this time, we have a motion and a second on the floor in reference to the first reading for bill number 2023-31. All those, any other discussion? If not, if you're ready for the question, all those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed signify by saying nay.
Nay.
Let it reflect that bill number 2023-31 has not passed first reading. Next, we'll move into our introductions of our resolution. First, we have resolution number 2023-36, and it's a resolution to proclaim August the 6th through the 12th, 2023 as National Health Center Week in the city of Florence. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I'm going to ask that our Deputy City Manager please come forth and read the resolution.
We got Nicole here to accept.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to get him to seal.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The resolution reads as follows. Whereas for over 50 years, community health centers have provided high-quality, affordable, comprehensive, primary, and preventative health care in our nation's underserved communities, delivering value to and having a significant impact on America's healthcare system. And whereas individuals are able to receive patient-focused, comprehensive healthcare services, including preventive primary care and dental care, case management, behavioral health services, maternal and child care, and enabling services from community-based facilities across the Palmetto State. And whereas, in addition to contributing to improved health in our communities, these facilities help lower the cost of health care by reducing inappropriate emergency room and hospital utilization and have a positive impact on the communities they serve. And whereas community health centers continue to provide an effective means of overcoming barriers to healthcare access, including geography, income, and insurance status. And whereas during National Healthcare Center Week, we celebrate Hope Health and their vital role in making the Florence community a better place and recognize their dedicated staff, board members, patients, and all those responsible for their continued success and growth. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the City of Florence, the City Council of the City of Florence does hereby proclaim August 6th through 12th, 2023 as National Health Center Week throughout the city and encourage all residents to recognize the important contributions of community health centers in safeguarding the health and improving the quality of life for the residents of the City of Florence. Resolved this 14th day of August, 2023.
I'm going to ask that Ms. Nicole Ethel come forward on the behalf of the staff of Hope Health, and I will step down as representation for the board of Hope Health. She says, well, I actually serve on Hope Health board, so Councilwoman will be presenting. Nicole, get you into the center.
It is with our deepest gratitude to present you with this award, this heartfelt resolution for your dedication and commitment to providing the top quality professional healthcare services that Hope Health provides. Thank you for being a vital part of our community. Thank you.
I'll make this really brief. Last week was National Health Center Week, and we had the ability to do a host of different events throughout the week to highlight some of the services that we provide. We had a Future Clinicians workshop where we had young kids wear white coats and talk about, you know, becoming a nurse practitioner, becoming a physician, also becoming a dietitian. So they had the ability to wear those coats and talk about, you know, what their future looks like at the age of 7 and 8 years old. Then we also went down to Orangeburg and we had a lunch and learn. And then on Thursday, we had a progressive business after hours where we highlighted our pharmacy and how important 340B and pharmacy services really means to the community. And because of our patients and their ability to use our pharmacy, we're able to take that money and provide behavioral health services and a whole host of other things that we wouldn't be able to do without that resource. So thank you for this today, and thank you for continued support of Hope Health. Everyone on here is engaged in that organization, and we really do work hard to make a difference in the lives, and we see people regardless of their ability to pay. So that's what makes us different, sets us apart, and we provide access to health care and try to eliminate social determinants of health. So thank you all, and y'all have a good day.
Thank you, Nicole. And I do want to acknowledge that the chair of the board of directors for Hope Health is Ms. Sav. So it's an honor just to step down today to represent her on behalf of the board, and to Nicole and all the staff of Hope Health. Thank you for the wonderful week that you promoted in order to engage the public to know what the services that Hope Health provides, but also to the staff of Hope Health, and especially to the pharmacy. Thank you for all the initiatives that are being introduced to expand the services. And if you don't know it, you can welcome to utilize the pharmacy at Hope Health, even if you're not a member there. Please come forward. And Nicole, once again, thank you for all that you and the staff is doing to continue the growth of Hope Health throughout the area. Thank you. At this time, we'll move forward with our resolution. Next, we have resolution number 2023-37. It's a resolution to authorize the transference of $1 million from the American Rescue Plan Act funds to the general public. General funds, correct that. Do we have a motion?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to send that to the Finance Committee for review.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to send the item to the Finance Committee. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign. Next, we have resolution number 2023-38. It's a resolution authorizing the city manager of the City of Florence to execute an American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, Stormwater Infrastructure Program subrecipient agreement between the City of Florence and the South Carolina Office of Resiliency to fund the stormwater infrastructure improvement project that will be mitigating impact of the future disaster. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? At this time, we'll hear from Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. This is a resolution that will authorize our city manager to execute the subrecipient application with the South Carolina Office of Resilience. This is the Pennsylvania Street watershed grant that we received from the state. This is part of the ARPA money that they were allocated. We received a $2.6 million grant to make those improvements, along with some matching funds from the city. And what this essentially does is it allows the City of Florence to procure the contractors and act as the manager for all those funds, and then we apply for reimbursement with the state as we go forward with the project. So if there are any questions.
Any questions from council?
When are they going to get started?
Chair recognizes Councilor Jamita for that comment.
So we are probably 90% complete with the plans at this time. We have to submit those to SCDOT along with EPA with any of the improvements that we're making. So we're finalizing some of the easements right now. The engineering, will be submitting those within the next month to 2 months, and then we should have the contractor procured by the end of the year, and then construction start first thing.
Any other questions? Council Chair recognizes Councilman McCall.
And I'm glad we got this done. And the people in the Northwest community is looking forward to this. What's the difference between the one off of Pennsylvania Street and then the one off Oakland Avenue?
So using the same funds, that's a separate grant that we received for that.
Okay, but separate. So this one here is ARPA grant.
That's right.
And the other one with Oakland Avenue is?
That was funds from, I believe it was Hurricane Florence that provided those funds for that.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign. Let it reflect the resolution has passed. Next resolution may be discussed in executive session is a resolution number 2023-39. Is a resolution of the City Council approving downtown redevelopment grants for the first quarter FY24. So if there's no objection, this will be heard in executive session. At this time, we move to our reports to council. We have appointments to boards and commission. We will hear from Mr. Davis, our Deputy City Manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of council. We have 8 boards of commissions that have vacancies. Our first board is our Planning Commission. We have 1 vacancy. We have applicants Michael Abbott, Deanna Adams, Eric Douglas, Mary Dowdle, Angela Foster, Wesley Snow. That appointment goes to Councilwoman Neesmith Jackson.
Chair recognizes Councilman Neesmith Jackson.
Okay, I am going to 1 more month defer.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Our next is our Board of Zoning Appeals. There are 2 expired terms on this board. We have seeking reappointment, Ruben Chico, Miriam James Singley, Deborah Moses. It falls first to Councilman Smith.
Chair recognizes Councilman Smith.
I'll appoint Deborah Moses.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for the appointment of Deborah Moses. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. And opposed, like sign. Let it reflect that Ms. Moses has been appointed.
Our next appointment falls to Councilman Braddock.
Chair recognizes Councilman Braddock.
I'm going to defer.
Thank you, Councilman.
Next board is the Civic Center Commission. There's 1 expired term. We have Ron Roberts seeking reappointment. Sonietta Cooper and James Hicks are the 2 applicants. This falls to Councilwoman Barnes.
Chair recognizes Councilwoman Barnes.
I'll appoint Ron Roberts.
We have a motion for Mr. Ron Roberts. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of Mr. Ron Roberts, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And opposed, like sign. Let it reflect that Mr. Roberts has been reappointed. Thank you.
Next is our Design Review Board. We have one expired term. Excuse me. The member must be a commercial general contractor licensed by the state. We have one applicant, Mr. Kyle Gunner. He does fit their requirements, and that falls to Councilwoman Neesmith Jackson.
Chair recognizes Councilwoman Neesmith Jackson.
Councilwoman Neesmith Jackson will defer.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Next board is the Housing Authority. We have 3 appointments to that board. Seeking reappointment is Gerard Moultrie, Rosa Mullins, Linda Williams. We have 13 additional applicants for this board. First to make nominations is Councilman Smith.
Chair recognizes Councilman Smith.
I nominate Calvin Robinson.
Second.
Here's been motion and second from Mr. Calvin Robinson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign. Let the record reflect that Mr. Calvin Robinson has been appointed.
Next appointment falls to Councilman Braddock.
Chair recognizes Councilman Braddock.
I'll appoint Jared Moultrie.
Jared Moultrie. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been properly motion and second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those favors signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign. Let it reflect that Mr. Moultrie has been reappointed.
And finally have Mayor Pro Tem Jabali.
Chair recognizes Pro Tem.
Nominate Linda Williams.
We have Mr. Williams. Ms. Williams. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of Ms. Williams, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And opposed, like sign. Let it reflect that Ms. Williams has been reappointed. So that concludes that board.
Our next board is Parks and Beautification Commission. There are 2 expired terms. We have seeking reappointment Simon Lee and Walter Salinger. We have new applicants Christopher Filial, Paula Lentz, and Hughes Page. Making nominations first is Councilwoman Barnes.
Chair recognizes Councilwoman Barnes.
Walter Salinger.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for Mr. Walter Salinger. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign. Let it be reflected Mr. Salinger has been reappointed.
Next council member to make a nomination is Councilman McCall.
Chair recognizes Councilman McCall. Thank you, Councilman.
Next board is Aesthetics Advisory Committee. We have 2 expired terms. Seeking reappointment is James Hicks and Letitia Jackson. We have new applicants Maureen Finger and William Thompson. First making nominations is Councilwoman Neesmith Jackson.
Chair recognizes Councilwoman Neesmith Jackson.
I will appoint William Thompson.
Nominated is Mr. William Thompson. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second in discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor of Mr. Thompson, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And opposed, like sign. Let it reflect that Mr. Thompson has been appointed.
Next making nomination is Councilman Smith.
Chair recognizes Councilman Smith.
I'll nominate Ms. Letitia Jackson.
It has been nominated for Ms. Letitia Jackson. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of Ms. Jackson, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign. Let it reflect that Ms. Jackson has been reappointed.
Our final board is Public Safety Citizens Review Board. There's 1 vacancy on the board. This falls to Mayor Irving. We do not have any applicants.
Thank you for that. And being that there's no applicant, I would defer on the premise that we do need our citizens to please go to thecityoflorence.com and please apply. So we thank you for that. Okay.
That completes our boards now.
Thank you. At this time, we'll move forward with the mayor's report. And as for a report, I simply want to say thank you to all the councils who went forward this past July for the annual Municipal Association meeting that was held in Greenville. It's an annual event where all the city leadership comes forward, and it's an educational process. We had the honor of being hosted in the city of Greenville. We did some participate in the tour to see some of the things that they were doing there and how their downtown was developing. And in conversation with their mayor, I would like to also report, talking with some other mayors, when it comes to Florence, they're very amazed with the growth and production that we're having here. They were also honored that we have the Great American Main Street Award, which they always let us know they attained in 2003, but the city of Florence is only the second city within the state of South Carolina to obtain that. In talking with their mayor, one of the things he did compliment on what we're doing is how our downtown is growing, and I do want you to know that we worked with them and under our leadership of our previous mayors. They had a close working relationship to do the things that we're doing here. And one of the things that he did point out that he wanted to compliment on us as a city that we're looking at already is making sure that we have housing, but also looking at affordable housing. He was saying that was one of the things if they could look back now, they would have want to factor that in to the plan they're moving on now. So City of Florence, know that you're being watched throughout the nation. You're being also praised on downtown, but also praised on the things we're doing to address the residential needs here in the City of Florence. So I just want to leave that with you and also say there are a lot of great things going on here throughout the city. You can see the breaking of the ground over there with the new parking that's coming up. You can also see the development of new residential areas. And downtown, Florence Downtown Development Corporation, we met recently, and there are some things coming forward with the building, such as the NOFO building, and also the old pharmacy, and also looking at things with the old theater downtown. But just know that as a whole, our city staff is working diligently to make sure that we continue to move the City of Florence forward. So I do want to say thank you to our city staff for what you do every day to make sure we're moving forward. And otherwise, we also completed the National Night Out, and that was held throughout the City of Florence as well as the county. And I do want to acknowledge that not only did our community association host events from the Northwest area to Dr. Ola Jones Park to Levi to also at Freedom Florence. And I want to acknowledge the fact that our law enforcement officers were there at each one of those events. They had to do some traveling, and especially our chief, to make all this event. But that's just a sign of the great people that we have working here in the City of Florence. To our city staff, again, thank you for all that you do. And that is my quick report. Otherwise, go to thecityoflorence.com so you can keep track of what is happening in your city. Also, look at your Facebook site for the City of Florence. And I do know that last month with our Councilwoman Neesmith Jackson is excited about that app that's going to be worked on for the city. So thank you again for supporting your city council as we're doing the things that we hope would be pleasing for our citizens. So thank you for that. And at this time, we'll move to our committee reports. And with our committee report, we will start first with our chairman of our Business and Development Committee. Chair.
Thank you. The Business Development Committee met on July 20, and we had a meeting at the what's been referred to as the NOFO building. It's 127 West Evans Street, and that's an exciting development that's going to be coming mixed use. It'll have Airbnbs upstairs on the upper two floors, and the downstairs will be restaurant and other retail. So we got a very nice tour of that building. Has some beautiful historic elements that are still in place on the upper floors, and Robert Lewis, who's the owner of the project and is going to be moving forward with it. Clint told us in great detail some of the other projects he's done in other parts of the state, and the attention to detail and trying to keep the historic elements as much as possible in place. So we're very excited about that and to see that project moving forward, and the stairwells that are there. And in fact, there was some of the frosted glass of some of the old offices that were internal to the building. You still see some of the businesses. There was an old law office that was up there at one point, one of the upper floors, and so it was just really neat to see that again. In years past, with my involvement with downtown redevelopment, we had the opportunity to spend a lot of time in some of these other buildings that have now come back on board, the Waters building, et cetera. And so to get a chance to peek upstairs at that one, there's still a few left that have some of the older historic elements to it, but not as many as there used to be. So that was exciting for our group to get a chance to go up and take a look at that. We also got a report, and that was the majority of our time was spent touring that building. But we did get a report on the updated projects that are going on. We got an update regarding the Third Penny Capitol Road projects, the water and sewer utility projects, the stormwater utility projects, as well as the demolition the development projects. Right across the street is Urban Square, and the pounding that we hear is music to Scotty's ears, even though it shakes his office as they're putting in the footers for the new parking deck. Once that is in place, then they'll be able to start on the apartment building, which, you know, we talk about housing and the need for housing, so it's exciting to have a new 4-story apartment complex that's going to be coming right here in downtown. So trying to address the housing element is an exciting piece of it. And we got some other updates along the way, but we did talk about the next new business that's coming up at our next meeting, and that's going to be, we'll be receiving information from the city staff regarding our gateways. And so that's been an important part of the work of the Business Development Committee, has been the gateways, and we look forward to really getting to roll up our sleeves and to dive into that in greater detail and to see what we can do on a comprehensive look at the gateways all into the city of Florence. If there's anything further that other committee members have to, nothing else? Okay, that is our report.
Thank you for that report, Chair. Next, we will move forward with our Chair for our Community Development Committee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As a point of information, we are excited that Miss Ann Brown has been hired as the Community Service Manager. I know Ann, and I'm excited that she will be working with our Community Redevelopment Committee. That's great news. Also, we are working, the City of Florence is working with 5 new developers to build housing units in our targeted area, and that's great news. And we also have 3 homes that are under construction. These are things we talked about last month, but I forgot to report them in my reporting. So our members are Shaquez McCall and Councilwoman Neesmith, LaShondra Neesmith. If there is not anything else, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Chair, for that. At this time, we'll move forward with our Marketing and Public Relations Committee. Chair, please.
Yes, we had a marketing and public relations meeting. We spoke about the awareness. One of my goals to keep the community engaged, educated, and motivated is to do awareness campaigns. And so we talked about the understanding your roles, understanding how to advocate for them. A lot of folks don't understand that there's 3 types of roles in the city of Florence, which is the city, the county, and state roads. So understanding which roads you live on to understand how to advocate funds for them and who are responsible for these roads. So thank you so much, Amanda. I know that they're starting that information on social media, so they'll be doing that awareness campaign on social media. So glad about that. And then next we'll be getting into pedestrian safety. I know that is something I got a call from Seth on, and they'll be working on that. And he was in the meeting when we talked about the pedestrian safety awareness campaign as well. Our survey was ended on July 28th. So hopefully everybody got to submit the communication survey. I know I did mine. And when it comes to the city app, the RFP has closed. It was due on August 1st. I do know that there is a committee of 9 that is reviewing. There were 7 proposals that were sent in. So the committee is reviewing them, and we should have an update along with the numbers from the survey and how well the survey did within the city of Florence. We'll have that when we do our marketing committee meeting on this Wednesday. So next month I'll have some updated numbers on that, okay? And hopefully when we're going to start our city app. So, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At this time, we'll have a report from the Chair from the Finance, Audit, and Budget Committee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members of this committee is myself, Councilman Brian Braddock, and Councilman J. Lawrence Smith II. We met on August 2nd here in the city center, and we discussed the. I need some readers. We discussed.
Happy to share.
We discussed the monthly financials ending in June before heading into the new budget year, presented by Mr. Kevin Rollison. In addition, we also discussed the impact of adjusting the water and sewer rates, and we're discussing whether or not to provide residents of the city a differentiated percentage compared to the county. It was on the agenda for us to discuss the Roundup. We couldn't get into it because the Roundup program, which will provide incentive for low-income people, not incentive, excuse me. It's a I don't want to say the wrong word, but it's help for low-income people and our senior citizens. But we couldn't get to it because of the robust discussion we had regarding the impact of the water and sewer rates. Lastly, we talked about the city of Greenville did create an economic development office, and we just had a conversation on potentially doing that in the city of Florence. However, just more so of what was entailed in their new resolution creating their office and what financial benefits or impact would be brought onto the city of Florence if one was developed here. And lastly, we brought up again the information regarding the opioid settlement funding. And it's my understanding that I think the city plans to have a more robust application process for council to consider at next month's meeting in September. And that will, unless I miss anything, Councilman Smith or Councilman Braddock, that will conclude my report.
Thank you for that report. At this time, that concludes committee reports, and we are prepared to enter into our executive session items. And those items, as listed earlier, would be to receive legal advice regarding a redistricting plan, 30-4-70A2, and also B would be for discussion of matters related to a proposed economic development project, 30-4-70A5, and C for discussion of a matter related to a proposed economic development project, 30-4-70A5, and a personnel matter, which would also be 30-4-70A1, and also item which was added is bill number 2023-27 for the purpose of receiving legal advice, which still would come on that 30-4-70A2. Do we have a motion?
Second.
We have a motion second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. And opposed, like sign. We're going to executive session. Council may take a short break. We have just returned from executive session, at which time no votes or action were taken. We are proceeding back to our agenda as outlined. First, we have bill number 2023-22 that was for a second reading that was referred to our executive session. It's an ordinance to revise the water and sewer rate schedule for the city of Florence, South Carolina. Do I have a motion or action?
Motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I will move to make an amendment, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
My amendment is to increase the rate by 1% in the county and decrease the percentage by 1% in the city.
You've heard the motion to increase the rates by 1% in the county and decrease the rate by 1% in the city. Is there any discussion or second?
Second.
So we have a motion and a second to amend the ordinance to reflect an increase of 1% in the county and a decrease of 1% in the city. Any discussion?
Discussion on that is, I think, sorry, Madam Mayor.
Chair recognizes McCall for this discussion.
Just a quick discussion. I think we've heard it throughout. Again, my main concern is I want to make sure that while we're doing the right thing for the utility, I want to also make sure that we're taking care of our low income and our constituents who are on fixed incomes. I think this here is not perfect, but it's a starting point for us, and including of also looking at doing the roundup program for them as well. With that, I also understand that there is a conversation about the need to look at tap-in fees for county residents, and I think this here is a starting point for us, and we can also look at in the coming months looking at the tap-in rates, tap-in fees for county residents to make sure they're also we're loosening that burden as well. So that's my motion.
Any further?
I already get motion. That's my discussion.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign.
Nay.
So we have a vote of 6-1. So the amended motion has passed. Correct, council?
Correct.
Correct, Ben? We're complete. All right, thank you.
No.
Amendment's passed now.
We got to vote on that amendment. All right. So now that we have the amended motion for Bill 2023-27, and that amended motion will reflect an increase for the county rate of 1% and a decrease of the city rates of 1 cent. Do you have a motion?
So, I think it's pending, isn't it?
No,
the
no,
amended
he said
motion is now on the floor.
Yeah.
we already passed. We passed the amended motion. We voted on that just now. That we did the amendment to the motion. So now we got the amended motion that we are voting on. So we got.
I got to second that again. Am I gonna make a motion on that or just vote?
I think it's already on the floor.
We voted.
Right, it's already on the floor.
Okay.
So it's been moved and
Second it.
For the amendment.
So now you can go to further discussion or call the vote.
Okay. Any more discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign.
Nay.
So we have 6-1. Thank you for that vote. Next, we have item number that would be ordinance was Bill number 2023-16 for first reading, and that was deferred to our executive session. It's an ordinance to adopt a redistricting plan for a 3 single-member district of the city of Florence, South Carolina, in accordance with the federal decennial census of 2020. Do we have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt option 2.
We have a motion to adopt option 2. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second to adopt option 2. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. And opposed, like sign. Let it reflect that the first reading have passed with the election of option 2. Okay. Next, we have an economic development project, which would have been resolution number 2023-39, a resolution of the City Council approving the downtown redevelopment grant for the first quarter of fiscal year 24. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And that completes those items. And at this time, our personnel matter, we did not take any action. We'll just have our council looking into further information for us. That concludes our agenda at outline. Any other discussion, any concerns? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Meeting hereby adjourned.